This lecture is going to introduce you to some architecture and a little bit of pottery from the American Southwest. The area that we're going to be briefly looking at is called the Four Corners area, and it's called that simply because we have these four states, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, that all border each other and meet in a corner, so it's called Four Corners area. There are actually a lot of several different cultures out in this area back during prehistoric times. First of all, we know that humans were in this area at least by 11,000 BCE. I think that date has been pushed even farther back with some recent discoveries. But the cultures in this area were the ancient Puebloan, also known as the Anasazi. You can see that they were mostly in this kind of green circled area. Then we have the Hohokam. They're in this orange area. And then we have the Magian culture, or the Magian Mimbres culture, that is in this blue area here. So those three cultures are the first three cultures that really experience a definite cultural development in this area. So when we are looking at archaeology in the Southwest, those are the earliest three cultures that we can designate as separate, distinct cultures. Later we'll have the Sinagua over here, and the Salado down here. Okay. So even today, there are actually a lot of sites in the Southwest, in these four corner regions, that you can actually go and visit. I've been to a few. They are pretty awesome to go to. I have been down to Mexico and Guatemala and Belize to see Maya sites. And yes, they are more like architecturally impressive, but these are really impressive because they're in the desert. There's like nothing out there. And yes, the environment was a little bit different back when they were built. Like maybe there was a little bit more water, but not a lot. So these people are building these really impressive architectural complexes in these places where there's not a lot of natural resources. Yet they manage to practice arid farming, and they manage to survive in these environments. And not only just survive, but clearly thrive if they have the means to build some of these structures. So I'm just going to show you a few, and then I'm going to talk really briefly about Chaco Canyon and show you some art from there. So you can find a lot of sites in Arizona, and actually if you ever make it out to the Grand Canyon, which you should because it's amazing, there are actually some probably ancient Puebloan, maybe Sinagua cultural sites there, just little small ones. They do have kivas, and I'll talk about what kivas are in just a second. Here is one of the cliff dwelling structures that you can find in Arizona. This is Montezuma's Castle. Yes, it's misnamed. It's named after an Aztec ruler, but it is actually belonging to the Sinagua culture, not the Aztec culture. And this dates from about 1100 to 1425. This one is kind of halfway between Phoenix and Flagstaff, Arizona. So if you ever get out there, go and check it out. This is Wapaki, and it is in Arizona. It is near Flagstaff. You can tell that it's in kind of this more northern Arizona area because of the use of this beautifully red rock. When you go up to the Grand Canyon, these are the type of colors you're going to see. You can see it here, just a little bit farther south. This was an Anasazi, or ancient Puebloan and Sinagua site. It was built sometime after 1100 and then was abandoned in 1225 CE. This is an interesting site because it actually was populated after a volcano erupted and made the soil more farmable. Another site closer to southern Arizona, it is northwest of Tucson. It's in Coolidge, Arizona. This is called Casa Grande, not to be confused with Casas Grandes, which is actually in northern Mexico. This is in Arizona, and it was built by the Hohokam sometime in the 11th century and it was lived in until about 1425 CE. This site actually is what you're looking at here is the main structure. that still survives. And you can see it's made kind of out of this like mud brick, so it doesn't hold up very well. Whereas when we looked at the others, this is made out of stone, so it held up much better, even in this environment. So this site actually has a ball court, and the Hohokam are kind of this interesting culture that seem to maybe border or connect possibly the Southwest and Mexican cultures, Mesoamerican cultures. That's actually what a lot of research is being put into today. This is Mesa Verde, probably one of the most popular Southwest sites. Has a really nice hotel you can go to. I didn't get to stay there, but I hear it's very nice. But it is in Colorado, and it is kind of southwest of Cortez, Colorado, if you're familiar with the area. It was an Anasazi or ancient Puebloan site. The actual area was occupied starting about 7500 BCE, but they didn't start building these cliff dwellings, which is what these structures are called, till the end of the 12th century. It's a really interesting site. They have it really well preserved and put together as an archaeological park today. So if you ever get a chance, it would be a good one to check out. It's not that hard to get to either. Now that site is related to Chaco Canyon, which is what we're going to talk about here. So Chaco Canyon was built sometime between 900 and 1230 CE. It was actually gradually built, so they kept adding on to it. The term Anasazi, which is the term we use for the culture that built Chaco Canyon, is actually a Navajo word. So it's not the word that these people use to call themselves. And it means, in Navajo, it means ancient ones or ancient enemy. This is a really weird site because when you go out there, you're going down the trail to get to this place. You know it's there, you know it's got to be there, but you feel like you're probably going down a murder road, and this is where you're going to die. The road is really awful. It is insanely bumpy. When the first time I ever went, we rented a PT Cruiser because that's all they had left. Don't ever do that. Just say I'll go somewhere else. And it was like driving in the snow. We were really kind of freaking out that we weren't going to make it, but we made it. You finally get down this really long road. I mean, miles and miles. It's really long, and you were still in the desert, and there's nothing there. There's like a tiny visitor center, and there's nothing else there. You were in the desert, and that's what these people encountered as well. Now, as you can see here, it looks like there's a creek that runs through it. Creek is a generous word. It's kind of like a puddle. Now, we do think when the Anasazi, or the ancient Puebloan, when they lived here, or occupied the site anyway, that there was probably a little bit more water in this area, but not a lot. So they did practice this arid farming. So here is the site. You can see that there is a structure right here. There are actually structures all over the place. If we go back here, you can see all these little dots and squares. That is all Chaco Canyon. There are all these, like what we call them, great houses, and we also have great kivas in this area. So the Anasazi built great kivas and great houses in the canyon between 900 and 1100 CE. And the most popular building, because it really is the biggest and it's the best preserved, is Pueblo Bonito. And it seems to be the oldest at Chaco Canyon. We know that it took about 3 centuries to build, and it covers more than 3 acres. You can see that it is this D-shaped plan, and that it is like a stacked pueblo. So it is like 4 to 5 stories high. It was built within a perimeter wall, so you can kind of see that wall right here. Here is an artist's reconstruction of what it may have looked like, so maybe you can kind of get a sense of that a little bit better there. But it's built within this wall. There were some 800 rooms in this structure. There were 30 kivas. When you look at it, especially when you look at the artist's reconstruction, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a big city. A lot of people lived here. I mean, 800 rooms. Think about, I mean, you don't know, everybody gets their own room. So think about how many people lived here. But actually, based on what archaeologists have found, we think that there weren't a lot of people living at the site. Remember, it's in the desert. Really can't support a huge population. But, nevertheless, they built it. They think that it was probably a ceremonial center. We think this based on what we find in archaeology and based on burials and trash pits and things like that. So we think that people were coming from all over the place to worship at this site. So perhaps it served as maybe a hotel, or, but more ceremonial than that. I once heard the comparison of, think about in years to come. Say we have some great apocalypse, and society is completely transformed. And people show up, people come and they're doing some archaeology on our culture, and they show up to a football stadium. And they're like, what the heck is this? It's all these seats. But people clearly didn't live here. What are they using this for? So I think that's kind of a good analogy of sort of how we can look at this structure. So something was happening that was important at this site. It was probably an important ceremonial center. We'll come back to that in a second. Now, at Chaco Canyon's peak, probably some 1,000 people lived here. But that's not that many, because this is just one. Remember, this is just one of many structures at the site. When you look at all of these, like this is a great house, this is a great house. We've also got some kivas in there, but we also have some more great houses in there. So it really could hold, technically could hold a lot of people, but it didn't. Only 1,000 people. The walls are built of stone, sandstone slabs, and also they used some wood. They also used dry masonry, and they covered it with plaster, and they probably painted it, but we don't know. The paint does not survive. So within these great houses, they had these circle structures, and these are called kivas. Here's what a kiva looks like. Now, a kiva can be used for many purposes. It is related to ritual. So here's a kiva at this site. And here's another one. Here's another one here. So there can be little kivas, and there can be what we call great kivas. Kivas are actually an ancient structure. They developed from pit houses, which were storage rooms, but then they become the semi-underground ceremonial chamber. They're usually circular, sometimes they're square. Prehistoric kivas share many features. They're usually underground, or at least mostly underground. They usually have an encircling bench on the interior. So here's these. This one actually has 2 encircling benches on the interior. They usually have a floor hearth, a ventilator for drawing fresh air into the room, stone or wood screen deflector between the hearth and the ventilator, a sipapu, which is right here, which is a symbolic conduit to the underworld or the previous world, which the spirits move through this hole. They sometimes have foot drums. And then they are roofed with interlocking pine logs. So they were used for for religious ceremonies, initiation rituals, clan ceremonies. They're actually, the structures are not these, because these, well, sometimes they have big festivals here, but these aren't really active sites today, of course. But the similar structures are used today by the Hopi and Zuni. We don't know exactly what goes on there. They're very secretive, of course, because these are their, religious beliefs that they don't really want to share with people who are not within their clan or tribe or group. Chaco Canyon has the largest kivas to date. They're 16 to 18 feet deep, 70 feet in diameter. Some of them are. That one's Casa Ricanada, which is what we're looking at here. Maybe it could have held up to 400 people inside of it. So we're thinking here that, again, it kind of goes with our theory of that this was a ceremonial center, because you build this giant structure to hold so many people. So people came in, they participated in whatever ritual was going on here, and then they left. So it needs to hold a lot of people. So it probably wasn't for like small clans. It's for some like large-scale ceremonies here. Pueblo Bonito stood at the center of a network of large straight roads that radiated. So we have this Chaco road system that people can travel into from some like 70 other communities up to like 400 miles away. And they come on these roads, and they're coming in to worship here.